I'll never forget the sound of my body hitting the cold concrete, my daughter-in-law's face twisted in rage, her fingerprints still burning on my arm, and my son standing in the doorway, staring at the ground, unable to defend me. "Go die in the street, you useless old woman," she screamed before slamming the door shut. It was in that moment, sitting on the freezing pavement, that I made a decision. This would not be the end. But before I continue, please check if you're already subscribed to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories travel. My name is Eleanor, I'm 70 years old, and until 6 months ago, I had a home, a family, and my dignity. Today, sitting in this borrowed apartment, I can see just how much my life has changed since that rainy March evening. It all started to unravel when my husband Arthur passed away 2 years ago. After 48 years together, I found myself alone in the house we had built with so much effort. Our only daughter had died young, leaving just my son Robert, who lived in another city. Arthur always said we should transfer the house deed to our son's name, but we never got around to formalizing it. The document remained in my name. After the grieving period, I decided I needed company. The solitude had become unbearable. I called Robert and suggested that he, his wife Clara, and my grandson come to live with me. He hesitated at first, but eventually agreed after a conversation with Clara. At the time, I interpreted it as generosity on their part. How naive I was. The first few months were peaceful. Clara seemed helpful, praising my recipes, asking for advice on raising their child. Robert seemed more distant, always engrossed in his work. I was just happy to have movement in the house again. Then I noticed subtle changes. My portraits with Arthur were gradually taken down from the walls and replaced with photos of them. My favorite pieces of furniture began to disappear, sold without my consent. "We're just modernizing, Eleanor," Clara would say with a smile that never reached her eyes. I began to notice how she changed when Robert wasn't around. The smiles vanished, replaced by constant orders and criticism. "Don't put your medicines on the kitchen counter. It makes the house look like a sick old lady's home." Or, "Do you really need the TV on that loud? Have some consideration." Small daily humiliations that I swallowed in silence, out of fear of being alone again. I tried to talk to my son, but he always downplayed it. "Mom, you're overreacting. Clara is just trying to organize the house." His gaze would always shift away from mine, as if he knew deep down that something was wrong. The situation worsened when I discovered they had taken out a loan using the house as collateral, forging my signature. I found the documents by chance while looking for an old recipe in a kitchen drawer. I confronted Clara that night when Robert got home from work. "How could you do this? This house was built with your father's and my sweat and tears, Robert." Clara exploded before my son could answer. "This house is already ours. Do you think we're here for charity? Robert is the only son. All of this will be his anyway." "But I'm still alive," I replied, feeling my face burn with indignation. That's when she got close to me, her eyes glinting with rage. "For now," she muttered, low enough for only me to hear. I didn't sleep that night. For the first time, I felt real fear inside my own home. The next morning, I called my friend Margaret, the only person I still trusted. We agreed I would go to her house to talk about what to do. I packed a small bag with important documents and some clothes. As I was about to leave, Clara appeared at my bedroom door. "Where do you think you're going?" "To visit a friend," I answered, trying to sound casual. She snatched the bag from my hands and emptied its contents onto the floor. When she saw the house documents, her face transformed into pure fury. "So that's it? You're going to try to harm us? After everything we've done for you?" Robert appeared in the hallway, drawn by the shouting. "What's going on? Your mother is trying to take the house from us. She wants to go to a lawyer to evict us." I tried to explain, but Clara had already grabbed my son by the arm, filling his ears with lies. I watched his face harden, his expression changing from confusion to disappointment. "Is it true, Mom? After all we did? Robert, they forged my signature. They're mortgaging our house without—" I couldn't finish. Clara was already pushing me down the hallway, grabbing my arm with surprising force. I tried to resist, but she was stronger, younger. Robert just watched, paralyzed by indecision. "Your place isn't here anymore," she growled, yanking the front door open with a sharp movement. With one final shove, I fell onto the cold sidewalk. My knees scraped against the concrete, tearing my pants. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of watching my own son shut the door, avoiding my gaze. The rain started to fall as I got up, trembling and confused. No documents, no money, nothing but the clothes on my back. In that moment, something inside me changed forever. The submissive, conciliatory Eleanor died there, on the wet sidewalk. In her place, a woman was born who would never again bow her head. I walked in the rain for nearly an hour, my knees bleeding, indignation boiling inside me. The clock in the central square read 9:43 p.m. when I finally reached Margaret's house. I rang the bell several times until I saw her silhouette through the frosted glass. Her face contorted in horror when she saw me. "My God, Eleanor, what happened to you?" I collapsed on her sofa, and between sobs I told her everything. Margaret listened in silence, her face hardening with every word. When I finished, she offered not just comfort, but a path forward. "My nephew, Paul, is a lawyer," she said, pouring me a hot tea. "He specializes in real estate and family law. We'll go see him tomorrow." I spent the night in the guest room, huddled under blankets that weren't mine, in a bed that didn't belong to me. The sound of the rain against the window seemed to amplify my thoughts. How could my own son allow this? How did we get to this point? I remembered the early days after Arthur's death, how Robert would visit only on Sundays, always in a hurry, how Clara started suggesting I sell the house so I wouldn't be alone. Now it all made sense. It wasn't concern, it was greed. The next morning, Paul received us in his office in downtown Cedar Hills, a man in his 40s with sharp eyes that showed no pity, only professional determination. "Your situation is serious, Mrs. Peterson, but not hopeless," he said after hearing my story. "If the house is still legally in your name, and they took out a loan by forging your signature, we have a solid case for fraud." "You mean I can get my house back?" I asked, feeling a spark of hope for the first time. "Not just get it back, but also press criminal charges against your daughter-in-law, and unfortunately, possibly your son as an accomplice." His tone was neutral, professional. The idea of suing my own son made me nauseous. Despite everything, he was still my Robert, the boy I had rocked in my arms. But then I remembered him standing in the doorway looking at the floor as I fell onto the cold sidewalk. "How long would it take?" I asked, my determination growing. "Processes like this can be slow, but we can request an immediate injunction," Paul replied. "The first step would be to get a copy of the original deed and verify if there has been any official transfer of ownership." In the following days, Paul worked tirelessly. He discovered that not only was the house still in my name, but the loan had been made through a fraudulent scheme. Clara had a contact at the bank who had facilitated the process without properly verifying the documents. "They dug their own grave," Paul said, organizing a stack of papers. "Now we're going to bury them with this. But before I continue, check if you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments. What was your reaction to my son's attitude? Your opinion is very important to me." During the weeks that followed, I lived in a strange limbo. Physically, I was in the apartment Margaret had kindly made available to me, a small but decent studio at the back of her house. Mentally, I oscillated between fierce determination and a profound sadness that visited me in the early morning hours. What hurt the most wasn't the pain in my bruised knees, nor the humiliation of being thrown out. It was the absence of a call from Robert. Not one call, not one message to see if his mother was dead or alive, as if 70 years of a mother's love could be erased with the simple closing of a door. Paul moved forward with the legal process, explaining each step with patience. Apparently, the bank was internally investigating the employee who had facilitated the fraudulent loan. The financial institution, fearing a larger scandal, was willing to cooperate with our case. One afternoon while waiting in Paul's lobby, I saw Clara step out of an elevator in the same building. I instinctively shrank back, feeling a mix of anger and fear. She didn't see me. Her face wore that expression of superiority I knew so well. She walked as if the world belonged to her. What was she doing here? I asked Paul when I entered his office. Probably consulting a lawyer. They must have been notified about the lawsuit by now, he explained. This is good. It means they're worried. At home, Margaret helped me recover not only my physical health, but also my self-esteem. You have to be strong for what's coming, she would say while serving me homemade soup. Justice without inner strength is just revenge, and revenge corrodes the soul. Her words made me think. I didn't want to become a bitter person, consumed by hatred. I just wanted back what was rightfully mine and, perhaps more importantly, my dignity. 2 weeks later, Paul called me urgently to his office. His usually serious face had a faint smile. We have a preliminary hearing scheduled for tomorrow, he announced. The judge wants to hear both sides before deciding on the injunction. My stomach churned. You mean I'm going to face my son and Clara face to face? Yes, and it's important that you're prepared. They will do everything they can to look like victims. They might even claim you're senile or incapable of managing your own affairs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, imagining 1,000 scenarios for the impending confrontation. How would I react upon seeing Robert? What would I say to him? The questions tormented me, blending into nightmares where I was on the sidewalk again, the rain washing away my tears. The hearing room was smaller than I had imagined, more like a formal office than the courtrooms I saw on television. The judge, a middle-aged man with tired but attentive eyes, observed us over his reading glasses. When Robert and Clara entered, accompanied by an expensive-looking lawyer, I felt my heart race. My son was thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes. Our gazes met for a brief moment, and I saw something in his eyes. Guilt? Remorse? Before he looked away, down at the floor, just as he had on that fateful night. Clara, on the other hand, maintained her haughty posture, as if she were doing everyone a favor by showing up. She was impeccably dressed, wearing jewelry I recognized as gifts Arthur had given me years ago. The hearing began with formal introductions. Paul presented our side first, detailing the signature forgery, the fraudulent loan, and culminating with my violent expulsion from the house. He presented photos of my injuries, medical reports, and the original deed to the house. My client was not only a victim of fraud, Your Honor, but also of physical violence and abandonment by her own family, Paul concluded. We request the immediate reinstatement of possession and the suspension of any transaction related to the property until the final judgment. Their lawyer then stood up, adjusting his expensive tie before speaking. His strategy became clear in his first few sentences. Your Honor, we are facing a sad case of senility and ingratitude. My clients took Mrs. Peterson in during a difficult time after her husband's passing. They rearranged their lives to care for her, only to be accused of fraud when they tried to make improvements to the family residence. I felt my blood boil with every blatant lie. He continued, painting me as a confused old woman who had verbally agreed to the transactions and then forgotten due to her advanced age. According to him, I had voluntarily left the house after a family disagreement. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up on trembling legs but with a firm voice. Your Honor, I am 70 years old, not 98. My mind is perfectly lucid, as any medical examination can prove. I never authorized any loan using my house as collateral. That property represents 48 years of work by my late husband and me. I looked directly at Robert, who still had his head down. I invited my son and his family to live with me because the loneliness was unbearable after losing my partner. In return, I was gradually pushed into the corners of my own home until I was literally thrown onto the street on a rainy night. I showed the still visible scars on my knees. These marks were caused by the fall. but the invisible marks, Your Honor. Those I will carry forever. A son who watches his mother being kicked out of her home and does nothing is a wound that doesn't heal. The judge watched me intently. When I finished, he turned to Robert. Mr. Peterson, would you like to say anything in your defense? Robert finally looked up. His eyes were teary. He opened his mouth to speak, but Clara grabbed his arm forcefully, her red nails digging into his skin. He hesitated, swallowed hard, and mumbled, "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded, carefully observing that interaction. After a few minutes, considering the arguments, he announced his preliminary decision. Given the evidence presented, I am ordering the immediate suspension of any transaction related to the property in question. As for the reinstatement of possession, I will decide after a psychological evaluation of the plaintiff to definitively refute the allegations of mental incapacity. It wasn't everything we had hoped for, but it was a start. Paul assured me the psychological evaluation would be just a formality. As we left the room, I crossed paths with Robert in the hallway again. This time, our gazes held for a longer moment. I saw his lower lip tremble. The fight wasn't just for a house, it was for my son's soul. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. I underwent a battery of psychological tests that proved, without a doubt, my full mental capacity. The psychologist's report was blunt. The patient exhibits cognitive function above the average for her age group, with no signs of dementia or mental impairment that would justify any kind of interdiction. Paul wore a confident smile as he showed me the document. This completely shatters their strategy. The judge will have no choice but to rule in your favor at the next hearing. While we waited, I began to reorganize my life. Margaret helped me find a part-time job at a nearby bookstore in town. The salary was modest, but it gave me purpose and a degree of financial independence. In my free time, I attended a support group for seniors who were victims of family violence, a reality far more common than I had imagined. There, I heard stories that echoed my own. Children who seized their parents' pensions, in-laws who manipulated inheritances, grandchildren who extorted their grandparents. Each story made me realize that my case, as painful as it was not isolated. It was part of a sad epidemic of neglect and exploitation. "You are all stronger than you think," said Mrs. Carmen, the group coordinator, a retired 75-year-old social worker. "Many prefer to stay silent out of shame or fear of hurting the family. You are here because you chose dignity." Her words strengthened me. Slowly, the broken Eleanor gave way to a more confident woman who was relearning how to occupy her space in the world. But before I go on, please check if you're subscribed to the channel and if you've liked the video so far. Your interaction motivates me to keep sharing these important stories. One afternoon, while shelving books in the self-help section of the bookstore, I heard a familiar voice call my name. It was Teresa, my lifelong neighbor who had lived next door to me for over 20 years. "Eleanor, how wonderful to see you. I was so worried. Your son said you had gone to live with a cousin in the countryside due to health problems." I felt my body go cold. So that was the story they were telling? "Teresa, that's a lie," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "They threw me out of my house. I'm fighting in court to get back what's mine." Her face showed shock, then outrage. I knew something was wrong. In the last few months, I've seen strange movements. Moving trucks taking away your antique furniture. People evaluating the house as if it were for sale. "They're getting rid of my things?" I asked, feeling a new wave of anger. "I'm afraid so. And there's more." She hesitated. "Just yesterday, I saw 'for sale' signs being installed." My heart pounded. They were trying to sell the house, even with a court order prohibiting any transaction. I called Paul immediately, who promised to take urgent action. The next morning, a court officer accompanied by police went to my old house to verify the complaint and reinforce the sales ban. Paul called me hours later, his voice brimming with indignation. "Mrs. Peterson, they took down the sign before the officer arrived, but the neighbors confirmed its existence. And there's more. We managed to access your room and found that practically all your personal belongings have been removed or thrown away. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears. My family photographs, Arthur's letters, my parents' gifts. All gone? Is there anything we can do? I asked in a trembling voice. Yes. This constitutes a breach of the court order and destruction of property. We will include it in the lawsuit and request a full inspection of the property. And most importantly, I managed to schedule the final hearing for next week. The days leading up to the hearing were the most tense since my eviction. I dreamt of the house every night. Sometimes it was on fire, other times transformed into something unrecognizable. In one recurring nightmare, I returned to find only an empty lot, as if the building had never existed. On the eve of the hearing, as I organized my documents, I received an unexpected visitor. Robert was standing at the door of Margaret's apartment, alone, with deep dark circles and a defeated look. "Can I come in, Mom?" he asked in an almost inaudible voice. My first impulse was to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. But the memory of the cold sidewalk and the closing door held my emotion in check. "What do you want, Robert?" "To talk, to explain, to apologize." I pointed to the simple chair in the small living room. He sat down, rubbing his hands nervously. "Clara doesn't know I'm here," he began. "If she knew..." He let the sentence die in the air, but his fearful look said it all. "Robert, what is happening? Why do you let her control your life like this?" He looked down, ashamed. "It's not that simple. At first, it seemed like she just wanted what was best for all of us. When she suggested we sell the house to buy something more modern, she said it would be better for you too, that you wouldn't have to deal with the maintenance." "And you believed her?" I interrupted, incredulous. I wanted to believe it. Then, when you rejected her proposal, she started to change. She became obsessed with the idea that we deserved the house more than you, that it was a waste for a widow to live alone in such a large property. He paused, gathering courage. By the time I found out about the loan, it was too late. The money was already spent, on expensive clothes, jewelry, a new car for her. I tried to confront her, but she threatened to leave me to take our son. "So you chose to sacrifice your mother to save your marriage?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "I was a coward," he admitted, the tears finally escaping. "That night, when she pushed you, I should have done something, anything, but I just froze, like I was watching a movie, not my own life." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately. Another part wondered if this visit wasn't just another one of Clara's strategies, perhaps to get me to drop the lawsuit on the eve of the hearing. "Why are you here now, Robert? What changed?" He pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and placed it on the table. "I found this hidden in her drawer. These are emails between Clara and a real estate agent. She's already sold the house, Mom, signing as you. The transfer was supposed to go through as soon as they could get a medical statement attesting to your incapacity." I took the envelope with trembling hands. The evidence was undeniable. Copies of contracts, bank transfers, all with my forged signature. "This is a crime, Robert. You know that." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm willing to testify tomorrow, to tell the judge everything. And what will Clara do when she finds out?" "Probably leave me," he replied with a sad smile. "But maybe that's a liberation, not a punishment." When he stood up to leave, I hesitated for a moment before hugging him. I felt his body tremble against mine, just like when he was a boy and had nightmares. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "Even if you can't forgive me, thank you for not giving up." After he left, I called Paul immediately, who came to pick up the documents. His face lit up as he examined the contents. "Mrs. Peterson, this changes everything. With this evidence and your son's testimony, we won't just get your house back, your daughter-in-law will likely face criminal charges." That night, I couldn't sleep, not from anxiety or fear, but because I could finally see the end of the tunnel. The justice I had sought for so long was within reach. Still, a part of me mourned the price. My son's destroyed marriage, our fragmented family, the traumas we would carry for the rest of our lives. But as Mrs. Carmen always said in the support group, the truth hurts, but silence kills. The courtroom was surprisingly full that morning. Besides those directly involved in the case, several seniors from my support group were there in solidarity. Mrs. Carmen sat in the front row, offering me an encouraging smile. Clara and her lawyer arrived punctually, but without Robert. She seemed tense, repeatedly checking her watch. When the judge entered and we all stood, there was still no sign of my son. "Shall we begin?" the judge asked, looking at those present. Paul stood up. "Your Honor, we were expecting the presence of Robert Peterson, the plaintiff's son, who was to present new evidence in this case." The judge consulted his watch. "We will give him 10 more minutes. If he does not appear, we will proceed without him." Those were the longest 10 minutes of my life. With each passing second, my hope dwindled. Had Robert backed out? Had Clara discovered his plan and prevented him from coming? The grim possibilities multiplied in my mind. Just as the judge was about to declare the session open, the back door swung open. Robert rushed in, followed by a police officer. His face was marked by a recent bruise, his upper lip swollen. Clara turned pale at the sight of him. She tried to stand up, but her lawyer held her arm. "Apologies for my delay, Your Honor," Robert said, his voice trembling. "I was briefly detained to give a statement at the police station." The judge frowned. "A statement about what, exactly?" "About an assault I suffered this morning at my residence. I filed a complaint against my wife." A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel, demanding silence. "Does this have any bearing on the case we are trying?" "Directly, Your Honor," Paul interjected. "Mr. Peterson is here to present evidence of fraud and document forgery committed by the defendant, his wife. Apparently, she discovered his intentions." Clara's lawyer shot to his feet. "Your Honor, I object to the inclusion of this statement. Mr. Peterson is not a defendant in this case, and his testimony is—" The next few minutes were decisive. Clara's lawyer tried desperately to prevent Robert from testifying, but the judge, realizing the gravity of the situation, allowed his statement. Robert walked to the front of the court with hesitant steps but a firm voice. He recounted everything: how Clara had gradually planned to take over the house, how she had forged my signature on the loan documents, and finally, how she had orchestrated my expulsion. "That night," he said, his voice cracking, "she had planned everything. She knew my mother had discovered the loan and needed to get her out of the house before she could seek legal help." The judge listened intently as Robert handed over the envelope with the evidence. The silence was absolute as he described what had happened that morning. "When Clara found out I planned to testify, she went crazy. She said I was betraying my own family for a useless old woman." Her words, not mine. When I replied that this old woman was my mother, she attacked me with a crystal vase. Clara kept her gaze fixed on the table in front of her, her fingers drumming nervously while her lawyer whispered in her ear, clearly scrambling for a last-minute strategy. "Mr. Peterson," the judge asked, "why did you not intervene when your wife expelled your mother from the house?" My son looked down, shame evident in every feature of his face. Fear, cowardice, and a lifetime of manipulation. Clara always knew exactly how to control me, making me believe my mother was the problem, not her. Only now, seeing what she was capable of doing to maintain the lie, do I realize the monster I let into our lives. Robert's statement lasted almost an hour. When he finished, he looked physically exhausted, as if he had run a marathon. Paul then presented the psychological reports confirming my full mental capacity, the expert reports identifying the forged signatures, and the testimonies of neighbors about my expulsion and the subsequent attempt to sell the property. When it was Clara's turn to defend herself, her lawyer tried to build a narrative of a woman pressured by circumstances who was only trying to improve the family's life. Clara spoke of my erratic behavior after Arthur's death, suggesting I had verbally agreed to the changes in the house. "Your Honor," Paul interrupted, "if Mrs. Peterson verbally agreed to everything, why was it necessary to forge her signature?" The lawyer stammered, trying to come up with a response, while Clara remained silent, her face a mixture of rage and despair. After hearing the final arguments, the judge retired to deliberate. Those minutes felt like an eternity. Sitting next to Margaret, I tried to prepare myself for any outcome. Paul seemed confident, but I knew that justice was not always as fair as we wished. When the judge returned, his expression was grave. "This case," he began, "goes beyond a simple matter of real estate. It is about human dignity, family respect, and the protection of the rights of the elderly." He methodically reviewed his documents before continuing. "Based on the evidence presented, I rule as follows. First, I order the immediate reinstatement of possession of the property to Mrs. Eleanor Peterson, its rightful owner. Second, I declare the fraudulently obtained loan agreement null and void. The financial institution must seek compensation from those truly responsible for the fraud. Third, I order the defendant, Clara Peterson, to vacate the premises within 72 hours under penalty of forced eviction." Clara shot up abruptly, her face contorted with rage. "This is absurd. That house is—" "Silence!" the judge ordered, banging his gavel forcefully. "Any disrespectful outburst will result in your immediate arrest for contempt, and I must inform you that, given the evidence of fraud and forgery presented, I am forwarding a complete copy of this case to the district attorney's office for due process in the criminal sphere." I felt tears stream down my face as the judge finished his ruling. They were not tears of joy or revenge, but of relief. Finally, after months of humiliation and uncertainty, justice had prevailed. When the session ended, I was surrounded by members of the support group, all offering hugs and words of comfort. Mrs. Carmen held my hands in hers. "You see, dignity always wins in the end." Robert approached hesitantly, his face still marked by the morning's assault. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I saw the child I had raised in him again, vulnerable, remorseful, seeking redemption. "Mom, Not now," I interrupted gently. "We have a lot to talk about, a lot to rebuild, but not today. Today we're just going to breathe." He nodded, understanding. There was a long road ahead to rebuild our trust, but at least now there was a road. 3 days later, accompanied by Paul, Margaret, and a court officer, I returned to my home. My heart pounded as I walked up the front steps, the same steps where I had fallen on that rainy night. The door was opened by Robert. Alone. Clara had already left, taking only her personal belongings. Stepping into my house again was like revisiting a distant dream. The walls were different. Many of the furnishings I loved were gone, replaced by modern pieces that didn't fit the spirit of the place. Still, it was my house. Every corner, every hallway held memories that no one could erase. In my old bedroom, now transformed into an impersonal office, I found a box hidden in the back of the closet. Inside, miraculously preserved, were some of my treasures. Family photo albums, Arthur's letters, my father's pocket watch. Somehow, these fragments of my history had survived the attempt to erase my existence. "We'll rebuild everything, Mom," Robert said, watching me from the doorway. "I know it won't be like before, but we'll do our best." I nodded, running my fingers over an old photo album. "Some things are irreplaceable, son. But what's important is that we're here, now. The rest, time will take care of. But before I continue, please check if you're subscribed to the channel and if you're enjoying this story of resilience. Share it with someone you think needs to hear this today." In the days that followed, I dedicated myself to restoring the spirit of the house. With the help of Margaret and other friends, I cleaned every room, rearranged the few remaining family heirlooms, and planted new flowers in the garden. Each gesture felt like a cleansing ritual, expelling the negative energies that had accumulated within those walls. Robert decided to rent a small apartment nearby, visiting me daily. Our relationship was far from what it once was, but we were trying. He attended the support group with me, where he gradually began to understand the extent of the trauma he had caused, not just to me, but to himself. I always saw myself as a victim of her manipulation, he confessed in one of the sessions, but I've realized I was also an accomplice. Every time I stayed silent, every time I looked away, I chose the easy path instead of the right one. Mrs. Carmen, with her quiet wisdom, responded, recognizing that is the first step toward healing, both for you and your mother. Life settled into a new normal. I continued working at the bookstore, not for financial need, but because I discovered I enjoyed the atmosphere, the conversations with customers, the sense of purpose it gave me. One afternoon, about 2 months after I got my house back, I had an unexpected visitor. Maria, my 8-year-old granddaughter, was standing at the living room door, holding her father's hand. "Grandma?" she called out hesitantly. "Can I come in?" My heart nearly stopped. Throughout the entire ordeal, I had thought about Robert, about Clara, about the house, but I rarely allowed my thoughts to turn to Maria. The pain was too great. She had been kept from me for so long that I feared she might have forgotten me. "Of course you can, my love," I replied, opening my arms. She ran into my embrace, her small body so familiar against mine. The smell of her hair, the softness of her skin. How had I lived without this for so long? "I missed you, Grandma," she whispered against my shoulder. "Mom said you were sick and couldn't see us, but Dad told me the truth. He said you're the strongest person he knows." I looked at Robert over her head, noticing the tears in his eyes. In that moment, something began to heal inside me. Maria brought a backpack with her, filled with drawings she had made during our separation. "This is you," she explained, showing me a drawing of a smiling figure with gray hair. "And this is Grandpa in heaven, watching over us." I spent the entire afternoon with my granddaughter, listening to her stories from school, helping her make more drawings, relearning the little quirks of her being that had almost faded from my memory. When it was time for her to go, I promised we would see each other soon. "How about Sunday for lunch? I'll make that pasta you used to love so much." "With white sauce and lots of cheese?" she asked, her eyes shining. "Exactly how you like it." After they left, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Something had changed within me that afternoon. The anger I still carried, that last vestige of bitterness that refused to disappear, began to dissolve. I realized that the true victory wasn't getting the house back, nor seeing Clara face the consequences of her actions. The real victory was in that little girl's hug, in the forgiveness that was beginning to blossom between Robert and me, in the ability to rebuild what had seemed irreparably broken. A few weeks later, I received a call from Paul. Clara had accepted a plea deal with the prosecutor's office, confessing to forgery and fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence, community service and probation, avoiding jail time. "How do you feel about that?" he asked, concerned I might find the punishment too lenient. I reflected for a moment before answering. "You know, Paul, at first, I wanted to see her pay for everything. I wanted justice in the harshest sense of the word, but now I just want peace. If this agreement means we can all move on, then I'm satisfied." He seemed surprised but pleased with my response. "You're an incredible woman, Mrs. Peterson, stronger than many of my clients half your age." I laughed softly. "It's not about strength, Paul. It's about wisdom. Age teaches you that carrying hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." That night, as I watered the new plants in the garden, I realized I was humming, something I hadn't done since before Arthur's death. It was an old tune, a song he used to sing while working in the yard on sunny Sundays. Looking up at the starry sky, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for getting my house back, but for rediscovering my voice, my strength, my place in the world. At 70, When many think life is winding down, I had begun a new chapter. Wiser, more compassionate, and infinitely stronger. A year has passed since that fateful night I was thrown out of my own home. Life has moved on, transforming in ways I could never have foreseen. Robert and Maria became constant presences in my life again. On Sundays, the house filled with the sound of laughter, the smell of home-cooked food, and the warmth of a family that, though patched up, had found its way back to Union. Clara moved to another city after completing part of her sentence. Occasionally, she would call to speak with Maria, but she kept her distance from the rest of the family. Robert finally initiated divorce proceedings, facing his own demons in therapy. Little by little, I saw my son find his voice again, his courage, his identity beyond the shadow of the manipulation he had lived under for so many years. As for me, I became something of a local celebrity. My story, initially shared only in the support group, gained notoriety when Mrs. Carmen invited me to give a talk on elder rights at a municipal event. Suddenly, I found myself a spokesperson for a cause that affected so many in silence. Many of you suffer in silence out of shame or fear, I told the audience at that first talk. You believe you must endure abuse to not destroy the family or cause a scandal. But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Your silence protects no one. It only perpetuates the cycle. The talks multiplied. I was invited to schools, community centers, even a public hearing at the City Hall about policies for the protection of the elderly. Everywhere I went, I found eyes that recognized their own pain in my story, and more importantly, saw hope in my recovery. Margaret, always by my side, started joking. "Eleanor, at this rate, you'll be running for city council soon." We laughed at the idea, but there was a seed of truth in it. I had discovered a voice I didn't know I possessed, an ability to articulate not just my pain, but that of so many others who felt invisible in society. One morning, over coffee, Robert asked me a question he had been putting off for months. "Mom, have you truly forgiven me? For what I did, or rather, for what I didn't do that night?" I put my cup down, carefully considering my answer. "Son, forgiveness isn't a single moment, a line you cross and it's done. It's a process, with progress and setbacks. There are days when I look at you and only see the boy I raised, with no resentment at all. And there are moments when the memory of that night comes back and it hurts again." He looked down, nodding slowly. "But the important thing," I continued, "is that I choose to forgive every day. Not for you, but for me. Because I've discovered that resentment is too heavy a burden to carry at my age." He smiled, his eyes misty. "You're the strongest person I know. Did you know that? It's not about strength, son. It's about choice. We can choose to be victims of our circumstances or the authors of our own stories. I chose the latter." The following week, I received an unexpected call from Paul. He was working on a municipal bill for the patrimonial protection of the elderly and wanted my collaboration as a consultant. The proposal would include more rigorous verification mechanisms for property transfers and loans involving people over 65. "Your experience would be invaluable, Mrs. Peterson. We can turn your pain into protection for others." I accepted immediately. It was a way to give meaning to everything I had been through, to transform trauma into something constructive, something bigger than my individual story. Working on the project connected me with lawyers, social workers, psychologists, and, most importantly, other seniors with stories similar to mine. We formed a support network that transcended the initial group, reaching vulnerable people who might never have had the courage to seek help on their own. One afternoon, while organizing documents for a meeting about the project, I found the letter I had written to Robert during my darkest days. I reread those words filled with pain and disappointment, realizing how far we had come since then. I decided to write a new letter, not of recrimination or regret, but of hope and renewal. A letter that expressed not just what we had lost, but mainly what we had rediscovered. "Dear son," I began. "A year ago, I thought I had lost everything: my house, my family, my dignity. Today, I realize that fall on the cold sidewalk wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter. I wrote for hours, pouring onto the paper not only reflections on our family's journey, but also lessons I had learned about resilience, forgiveness, and new beginnings. When I finished, I placed the letter in a special box, along with photographs of Arthur, mementos from Maria, and other recovered treasures. One day, when the time was right, I would give the letter to Robert. For now, it represented something just for me, a testament that even in the darkest nights, there is always the possibility of dawn. At my 70th birthday celebration, I looked around the table filled with new and old friends. Margaret, Mrs. Carmen, members of the support group, colleagues from the bookstore, Paul and his wife, Robert and Maria. People who had helped me rebuild not only my life, but my faith in humanity. As Maria presented me with a homemade cake with lit candles, I made a silent wish that my story could light the way for others still walking in darkness, that my voice could give courage to those who had not yet found theirs. As everyone sang happy birthday, I felt a familiar presence beside me, almost as if Arthur were there, smiling with pride. Perhaps he was. Perhaps he had witnessed my entire journey, from the cold sidewalk to this moment of celebration. I closed my eyes and blew out the candles, surrounded by the warmth of my recovered family and the friends who had become family. And I knew with a deep certainty that I would never again bow my head to anyone, not out of fear, not out of shame, not out of misplaced love. Because at 70 years old, I had finally learned the most valuable lesson of all. Our dignity is not something others can permanently take from us. It is something we can reclaim at any moment just by having the courage to stand up one more time. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos I don't post here. I'll be waiting for you there.